We first became aware of Polish builder Virtue boats at the Palma Boat Show back in 2023. It was at the launch of their debut model, the V10, and they were making some pretty extraordinary claims in relation to its performance with twin 250s and a peat step hull. We weren't able to take it out back then, but we've come back a year later and we're going to do exactly that now. So we're out on the water now at the helm of the V10, and it's quite a compact unit, this helm station. There are two seats, both with bolsters, both suspension equipped. That comes as standard, and you've got 4.5 movement there, which is handy, plus a little foot brace down below. Even when you've got the seat quite a long way back, it's still quite a compact space. I'm a 6-footer, and I'd feel the need for a bit of extra length just to jam my feet against the angle of the console where it meets the deck. That said, there's plenty going on at this dash. We've got a couple of 12-inch plotters there, plenty of switch gear on the right-hand side. We've got the throttles here on the right-hand side, of course, and the tabs are on the left-hand side there. We also have these little sort of wrap-around wings. Interesting looking screen, this. All the more interesting because we've got features like this lovely F1 style carbon fibre strut to hold up the hard top. But what we want to do, given this is a performance boat, is get her underway. Now we've got a couple of BF250s, Honda BF250s on the transom. You can go to twin 300s, but apparently this would be good for 50 knots. Twin 300s about 55 knots. Or you can go for a single 250, which will give you around about 34 knots. But apparently in this part of the world, people want the extra safety and security, the redundancy that an additional engine brings. So the 250s is the most popular spec. Now we've got a peat step hull here as well. And the principle behind the peat step hull is where conventional spray rails are relatively flat and attempt to fling water sideways. Well, the spray rails on a peat step hull, they're more angled, they're angled downwards, so they try to fling the water downwards and aft, creating an additional high pressure zone beneath the planing surface for extra lift, extra efficiency and extra pace. So let's see how she does. Now the first thing to note is that this is a pretty quick boat. That pickup's pretty urgent. We were passing 30 knots in very short order, we're now doing 40. And it feels pretty efficient. The waterline's way back there. We'll trim her in a touch and pop her into a turn, see how she does. That's interesting. There's a little bit of slip dialed in there. It's not just grip and go like a go-kart. A little bit of slip, and the pivot point is pretty much directly beneath me, so that feels pretty nice. Good bit of heel. Decent bit of lean there. Oh, and then I've just rated the props. Just trimmed her out a touch too much, but that's okay. We just slid a little out. I can dip the legs again, go again. It's perfectly controllable. It's by no means a frightening experience, that. And we'll just trim out those legs on the straight and we'll see how fast we can go with her. We got 3 men on board today, so we're not particularly weighed down, and we're doing so far about 42 knots, 42.6. Just touching 43 knots, 44 knots, at around about 5,850 RPM. So as I'm travelling along here in the standing position, I'm not getting a great deal of protection from this screen. I've got rain pretty much hitting me in the face at 40 odd knots. It's peculiarly painful, like little needles just jabbing at you. So what we'll do is sit ourselves down on the suspension seats, see if that's any more comfy. Well, there's still a fair bit of wind hitting me, and And actually the screen rim, which is quite thick and black, does sit pretty much in your eye line, blocks out the horizon a little bit, so that's not perfect either. The drive, however, notwithstanding the ergonomic difficulties of the seating position and the visibility, well, the drive is a lot of fun and far more approachable, far more accessible for the novice than you might have anticipated. Well, now that we've satisfied ourselves that we know what the performance is all about, let's step aft and see what else this boat has to offer. I'll just hurdle this transom gate and head to the swim platforms first, because they're pretty substantial. As you can see, they straddle those outboards, plenty of space, a little bridge to get from side to side, and that of course lifts up so you can trim your engines out. And on the starboard side we have a little hatch here which hides a ladder that folds out over the side. That's a good spot for it. And we have sunken cleats here too. This boat is attempting to be relatively premium, so you get elements like the sunken cleats as standard, and so too this carbon fibre detailing here and at the dash. But while we're back here, let's just have a look at the basic layout, because it's pretty commonplace for boats of this type. Step past the shore power here so I can give you a better perspective. If I look forward, you'll see we've got unencumbered side decks that lead all the way up to the bow, wrap around the central furniture. And back here in the cockpit, well, we've got a bench facing forward to an aft facing bench with a table in the middle running transverse. That drops down into the gap to create a nice big sun pad, and this backrest also drops down so you can expand it even further. As you would tend to expect on a modern sporting day boat of this kind of size, we also have the obligatory drop down terraces, one on either side, and they're a really good size here. Really expand the deck space, and they're perfectly positioned too on either side of this cockpit dinette, exactly where you'd want them for maximum benefit. Simple to operate too. Straightforward push button mechanism here built into the bulwark, and a little retaining bolt just so you can secure it in place when it's in the vertical position. Ahead of that, again in fairly conventional fashion for a boat of this type, we have a transverse wet bar. Now we have 6 cup holders built into the side of that, not drained, I ought to point out. They should be, of course. Down below, a pair of fridges, which is very handy if you intend to use this as a party platform. And so is the storage. Just a couple of drawers, little compartments for your cutlery, your glasses and so on. And on the top we have a very heavy duty lid. Now when I was driving this boat I shifted the chair back just to give myself an extra bit of leg room, so when I try to lift the lid it kind of rubs against that and gets knocked back down. But I've tried it without the seat in that position, and actually those rams are too small for this big heavyweight lid, so just a little knock and down it comes. So that needs addressing. But in terms of what this wet bar actually provides, we've got an electric hot plate there, an electric hob. We also have a very decent size of sink and a little bit of work surface here to the side. Now let's make our way around to the port side and up towards the foredeck. And as we do so, you can see there's a step up to factor in a little bit of extra volume down below, and there's also a grab rail built into the hardtop so that as you step up you can do so relatively easily. But I find that that protrudes and is actually a bit of a hazard for your head. If I step up there and rotate the camera, you'll see it comes right up to mouth level when you're up on the higher level, and when you're down below sort of shaves the top of your head. So cracking your head on it is extremely easy to do. For my money it'd be better if they just cut out an element of this T-top and recessed the rail in there, exactly as they have done right here in the bulwarks. That works beautifully and it looks very slick too. In any case, once you're up on the foredeck, what you get is a central island sunbed, precisely as you would expect. It has a backrest built into the leading edge of that console, so that's very comfortable, and it's big enough for a couple of people. Again with a couple of cup holders, again though undrained, and a hatch of course for extra light down below and to chuck baggage down should you need to. And up in the forepeak, this being a very modern and pretty day boat with a vertical stem, we have a clever little anchoring system with a forward cap that just moves aside, enabling the anchor to push out before dropping down so you don't damage your fiberglass. Now let's make our way down the starboard side deck, cut across via the Helm and take a look at what the accommodation provides. And in all honesty, I'm not expecting great things because, of course, this is a very tapered boat, both in terms of the hull and the top sides, and we also use some pretty substantial side decks. So the volume's not really there to play with, and when you get down below, that's very much borne out. In order to straighten up, I have to pretty much get on my knees here. It's certainly not big enough for a 6-footer to stand up. And if I point the camera forwards, well, there's our double berth. We do have very big windows at the entry point on both sides. That's very welcome, good for natural light. And of course, there's that hatch that we spoke about earlier in the forward sunbed. But these are the sides of that elevated island sunbed. So I'd like to see some windows factored in there as well. Just little letter slot glazing sections, just to give you a sense of extra light and extra space. As for the bed itself, as I say, that tapers significantly forward, so you'd sleep with your head aft. And the natural trim of the boat suggests that would be the way to go anyway. But I don't see any charging points back here or reading lights, and I'd expect those, to be honest with you, as standard. So that's a bit of an oversight, I would say, from Virtue. That said, the materials are perfectly decent, quite pale woods, attractive fabrics. And if I spin myself around and take a look to the port side, well, here's your heads compartment. Now I can't actually find the light for this, and the Virtue guys have gone, so we're going to have to look at it in the half light. The scale of it's pretty decent though. Toilet, sink, a very big mirror, and a massive window there with an opening section for ventilation. And of course, you can use this as a wet room if you opt for that, because we have drainage down there in the deck. So what are we to make of this new V10 from Virtue? Well, it's certainly a very good looking boat. It's also a fun boat to drive, and it's novice friendly too. Novice friendly in a way I wasn't necessarily expecting for it. In truth though, the range is a bit limited. The forward cabin is also a little bit limited, and there are loads of boats out there adopting this kind of style and deck layout. But if this is the kind of boat you're into, then the new V10 from Virtue has to be a part of that conversation.